What's going on, everybody? Nick Whalen, Jim Coventry. I think I pointed the wrong way. Everything is mirrored here. Jim Coventry from RotoWire. We are here talking week 14 already for the Circa Million ATS picks contest. Just can't speak today, Jim. We're like 5 seconds into the video. That's how excited I am to talk about these lines, Jim. We got some really fun ones coming at us. Only 5 more weeks to make moves in the Circa contest. And as you know, it's 5 picks against the number each week. You got to take your 5 favorites. There's no weighting, anything like that. Each pick counts the same, counts as 1 point. Coming off of a bit of a complicated week. I was all over the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. Love that. That was one of my favorite bets. I love the Jags on Monday night. Both of those games went haywire for both different and similar reasons. I mean, we saw some defensive no-shows on both sides. Both quarterbacks ended up getting hurt, but I felt like even before Kenny Pickett and Trevor Lawrence both exited those games, we saw signs of slippage defensively for Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. And, now I don't know if I'm willing to trust either team this week, and we'll dive into those games.
I'll make one quick comment about Pittsburgh. I told people last week, Mike Tomlin has a long history of not showing up against inferior opponents. Sometimes they pull those games out late. A lot of times they lose them, but Tomlin is horrible at getting his teams up for bad opponents. Fortunately, this week, they're not going to let down because they just had a letdown, but we'll talk about that maybe later.
Well, here's the thing with the Circa contest. The Thursday game is eligible. However, if you want to play the Thursday game, you got to get all of your picks in for the week by, I think it's like 5 p.m. Eastern. I don't like doing that. We've only done that one time all year, and that was the Thanksgiving slate where we liked multiple games on Thursday. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that, to me, it's just not really worth it. I mean, you have to absolutely love that game. You have to consider it a complete lock because you're sacrificing information because the actual deadline, is around noon on Saturdays. You got 2 more days worth of news to come. And I'll be honest with you, Jim, this is probably not going to shock you. I don't feel strongly enough one way or the other on Steelers minus 5.5 tonight.
No, once bitten, twice shy. I totally get that. We can move on to the regular slate of Sunday games.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So you and I were talking off air about some of the games that we want to discuss, some of the games that we like. I'll let you begin because I know that we're in agreement on at least 2 of your 3 games. So where do you want to start?
It's weird. The Broncos have been such a interesting team over the year. They were a horrific team. Now they're a really good team. In this recent run, I know they lost to the Texans last week, but they have played winning teams for 6 straight weeks. They just keep winning aside from the Texans game, which they had a chance to win that game too. The Chargers, this is not a good football team. And look, coaching, Sean Payton will so significantly out-coach the Chargers staff, and the teams match up well because the Broncos, they built this team to run the football, use a little play action, limit Russell Wilson. Well, guess what? The Chargers are bad across the board, but when you could put the screws to them on the ground, they can't hold up. So this is a perfect scenario. And then on the other side of the ball, the Broncos are bad against the run, but it's not like Austin Eckler's any good or the run blocking is, and they're going to have to throw. That's the strength. So look, the Broncos, they're getting points here. I think they win this one outright, Nick.
So do I, Jim. This was the line to me that jumped out most when we saw those, even throughout the week. It's not like this is a surprise line here from Circa. And by the way, once the lines come out around noon on Thursday, they do not change. They don't change. These are locked in. So we are getting, the Denver Broncos at a pretty friendly number. You're getting them at plus 2.5. I'm with you. I think this number could be Broncos minus 2.5. That'd be a little strong, of course, on the road, but I think they're the better team. They're absolutely the team that I trust more than the LA Chargers. I mean, they're at the bottom of the list for me. I mean, it's Atlanta, it's LA, and basically every team in the NFC South. But I think the Broncos have looked like the much better team. I don't know. I certainly don't elevate the Chargers whatsoever for what we saw last week against New England. It's like, props to you for going and winning that game, but you score 6 points on the Patriots. You rushed for, 29 yards as a team. Neither team even entered the red zone at any point. 0 for 22 drives. None of them went further than the 25-yard line. I mean, that is the one advantage to me that the Chargers have is the quarterback position. I am an undying Justin Herbert is good supporter, but it doesn't matter when everything is crumbling around him, including the coaching. And it feels like he's just kind of down to Keenan Allen. And if Keenan Allen is not bringing in 13 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, like what's the other option? Like Austin Eckler to me looks like a complete shell of himself. And, the Chargers rush defense too has been very concerning. That is a way I think that Denver can exploit the Chargers. Even last week against New England in a very obvious matchup where Ramondre Stevenson goes out early, you still allow almost 150 rush yards in that game. I mean, had it not been for the Stevenson fumble early on, who knows how that game turns out. So I think this is a matchup that plays into how Denver wants to play, which is, like you said, keep the ball on the ground, play conservative, hit those screens, and then once or twice a game, maybe you take that deep shot to Cortland Sutton.
Yep. Yeah, no, great analysis on that. I think we see this exactly the same way. And look, anything can happen in a game, but even if the Chargers win, this is the team that they're not winning by more than a field goal. They're winning by literally a point or two. Maybe they squeak something weird. They're not going to likely cover 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And to be clear, our number is 2.5. So it becomes a little dicier. But again, I think there's a better than 50% chance that Denver just wins this game outright. So we like the Broncos first and foremost. Jim, I know you have some feelings on the Miami Dolphins this week as well. Believe it or not, another big number for Miami. They're back home after 2 games on the road, 2 big wins. 13-point favorites are the Miami Dolphins at home against Tennessee.
I mean, this requires some of the least granular breakdown of the games. The Dolphins at home against bad opponents have taken care of business all year long. The Titans on the road have been a horrible football team. When they're at home in their home field, they play very well. It's night and day. But the biggest injury in this game is Jeffrey Simmons, the all-world defensive lineman of the Titans, being out. If there was any chance to get pressure on Tua and up the gut pressure, it would have been Jeffrey Simmons. Tierra Tart's a great run stopper, but not the presence. And so Tua, who gets the ball out quickly anyway, may have a little more time than usual. And the Tennessee secondary, they can't hang with decent receivers. Now you're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and even the run defense. This Tennessee defense isn't the lights out unit of years past, but the speed with Achane and Mostert, there's literally not much chance. And then just quickly on the other side, the Dolphins defense galvanizing as a Vic Fangio defense does. They learn their responsibilities and communications. It improves. And Jalen Ramsey's been back. I just don't see a scenario where Tennessee moves the ball. And I see the Dolphins putting up over 30.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I think this could be another 40-point day for Miami. Honestly, kind of a name your score type of game. You look at the season-long defensive numbers for Tennessee, and you say, okay, they're 6th in rush defense EPA. To me, that's like almost entirely because of how great Jeffrey Simmons is. You take him away, that is going to be a massive, massive problem, especially with Devon Achane back in the mix for Miami. And even with that, Tennessee 29th in pass defense EPA. So even if you're of the belief that Tennessee can hold up against that Miami rushing attack, I think this could be a disaster day for a secondary that was bad coming into the year. You trade away your best player early on, and it's gone from bad to worse, right? I mean, we saw what Gardner Minshew and the Colts were able to do last week. If you're allowing Minshew to go up and down the field on you, even with some of the massive mistakes that he made, I mean, how's it going to look against Mike McDaniel's offense? I think this is going to be a really, really ugly game. And, if this was 14 plus, maybe I'd back away. But I think this is a game that, barring a disaster situation, 3 turnovers for the Miami Dolphins, I think they cruise to a 2-score win.
They had multiple turnovers in that Carolina game, and it looked bad for a while. They blew them out. It wasn't even, by the time it was over, it was, I believe, over 20 points. So, yeah, they could even turn it over 3 times, Nick, and I think they still cover it.
That is a good point. That's the thing with Miami. And correct me if I'm wrong, that Carolina game, they were down 14-0.
Yes,
right? And you're
correct.
Thinking, oh, my goodness, I'm on the wrong side of this. And like 25 minutes of real time later, they're up by score and they're off and running. So that is one reason that I view Miami and San Francisco almost differently when you look at these big lines. I know historically when you're talking about a line that's 12, 13, 14, in general, it might not be a good idea to just lean toward the vastly better team. But the way Miami plays, how quickly they score, they almost unintentionally run the score up just because of how their offense operates.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So I think we see this game in lockstep. I don't think the Dolphins, last thing I'll reiterate, they have not taken bad teams lightly at home. There's value in that. Because if there was a trend of that happening, we could say, okay, well, they're going to have a letdown. I just don't. They're having too much fun out there. And that's not my high level analysis, but that is very simply, they're having fun and they're going to keep having fun at the expense of other teams.
79-28 over the last 2 weeks, those road wins over the Jets and the Commanders. I don't know that those two teams are all that much worse than the Tennessee Titans. Jim, another game I know you like this week. Let's talk about arguably the game of the week. We got 2 big ones on Sunday. Bills Chiefs is one, but the other Eagles Cowboys. And this one is going to go a long way toward deciding the NFC East. I believe if Dallas wins, they temporarily take over. Although I did read earlier today that even if Dallas wins and both teams win out, the Eagles would end up having the tiebreaker. I'm not going to pretend to know what those tiebreakers are, but regardless, if Dallas wants a shot at the division crown, they need to win this game. Are you on the Cowboys -3.5?
I am on the Cowboys. Not being a front runner here based on recency bias. Look, the matchups, we have talked for weeks. The Eagles have been winning. They've been fantastic. And you can't argue wins. But we saw they cannot cover the middle of the field. Their linebackers have no ability in coverage. Their safeties have no ability in coverage. Bradbury and Slay are having down seasons. You can't run on them. Fine. Dallas learned weeks ago. Mike McCarthy, I tip my hat to him. Not that I have a bald head, but still, Mike McCarthy realized, oh, we don't have a sustaining running game. We have to lean on the pass. And then what they did was they used CD Lamb as a movable chess piece to put him in a conflict position against defenses and move him to spots where they can't deal with him. That will continue. I want to say Lamb went for 191 yards in the first meeting. It's going to be the same thing. They cannot do anything, Philadelphia, from a defensive standpoint to stop that because they have not been able to. There's nowhere to move pieces. And then Jake Ferguson's going to get his. Yeah, so they are going to move the ball at will against this defense, and there is nothing the Eagles can do.
I think this is a bad spot for Philly. I know there's a narrative out there that, you kind of pick yourself up off the mat after getting beat down by San Francisco. It's a team that's found ways to win tough games in these type of situations all year. I think this game means the world to Dallas, right? I think they've been waiting for this one since the initial matchup earlier this season, a game that Dallas very nearly stole, by the way, in Philly at the end. And I think Dallas has only picked up steam of late. The question with the Cowboys is, how much do we value just, absolutely demolishing bad teams? The resume, especially at home, it is not filled with top level teams. This was going to be easily their toughest test at home all season. Is there any concern to you about a jump up in competition?
First of all, I do want to just address quickly Philadelphia. I have to stay there. San Francisco blew them out of the water. Dallas defensively is not San Francisco, but they can do a lot to limit the Eagles' offense. Now, getting Dallas Goedert's back is a big deal for them. It definitely is. But ultimately, Jalen Hurts has had his, I'm going to say struggles. For fantasy, he hasn't, but for real football, there are periods of time where it's not clicking. They're not going to be able to keep up. He's not the same threat as runner. I know he ran for the touchdown against Buffalo. He's not been the same level of runner. He's not putting the same limits on opposing defenses because of his running game. Dallas's defense is going to be just fine here. They're going to get pressure. The Philly offensive line is still excellent. They're not at that elite level they were last year. So no, I don't see a scenario. Dallas is coming in here. They're taking care of business. Philly, they are what they are. They're a great team, but they're not a supernova.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think Philly is going to be able to score with Dallas, relatively speaking. I'm not that worried about the offense for Philly. I know, it kind of feels like there's been this underlying narrative that Jalen Hurts is banged up, and I think he is, but he also still, to me, looks really good. And maybe he's like a slightly diminished version of himself last year, but that was, in my opinion, the best regular season quarterback in the NFL. So I'm not that concerned about that. It's the defense for the Eagles. And that's what you mentioned right off the top. Even in those close games that they won, you think back to the Washington game, the Dallas game, the KC game, the Buffalo game. I mean, they gave up 472 yards to Washington, 406 to Dallas, 505 to the Bills, and 456 to San Francisco last week. Like, this is a really, really concerning trend.
It's not changing. They brought in Shaquille Leonard. I'm sorry. The Indianapolis Colts let him go. They're a playoff team. They let him go because he's a shell of the player he once was. He is not solving their problems. So if anybody got excited about that, not so much.
Yeah, to make an egregious NBA reference, Jim, he is in like the DeMarcus Cousins phase of his career, where it's like, whoa, hey, DeMarcus Cousins, he was an all-star. Well, yeah, there's a reason that he's on his fifth team in 5 years. All right, let's talk about a few more games. I think those are the three that we like the most. I will say I don't love the number at 3.5 for Dallas. Obviously, would love to get that at 2.5, but still, if you're that strong on Dallas, you like to think they could win that game by a touchdown. One that I'm keeping a close eye on, and this is the reason that I do not submit my picks on Thursday, Jags Browns. If Trevor Lawrence does not play, I really like Cleveland -3.5. Low total here. And obviously that would be the case when you have Joe Flacco going up against CJ Beathard. But I think this would be a really difficult spot for the Jags. You're already demoralized coming out of Monday night. It's a short week. Not only did you lose Trevor Lawrence, but you got some injuries on the offensive line. You might be without 2 of your starting tackles. You're without Christian Kirk for the rest of the season. And on top of all that, you could not run the ball whatsoever against a really bad Cincinnati defense. A Cincinnati defense that's been handing out yards to anybody who will take them. And if you're asking CJ Beathard to win this game against the Browns defense, and you're assuming that you're not going to be able to run the ball, I think this could be a disaster game for Jacksonville. But the big question is, will Trevor Lawrence actually sit out? He was active at practice today.
Look, Trevor Lawrence, say what you want. If he plays in this game, he is in trouble because he will be immobile. This isn't Patrick Mahomes coming up that would last year playing. I don't know how he got through what he got through, but they immediately said multi-week injury, get him back for the playoffs. I think it's gamesmanship. I think they realize the magnitude of the game. I think you want to put some doubt in the opposition when they're game planning, so they game plan for more than you would expect. I just don't see, if he's a stationary target, he's going to put himself in peril of further injury. Now, last week, Myles Garrett was not himself, so there's that. He hopefully gets a little healthier this week, but I don't see a scenario. Cleveland at home has been markedly better, more aggression defensively. And that offensive line, like you point out, the Jaguars, and they're already down a left tackle. He said they may be down more than that. And all that said, that is going to be a very difficult scenario. And the run blocking is not good. Travis Etienne has to do it all on his own. So what would be a middling run matchup, not so much, because that run blocking is problematic. So, and I do expect Flacco to play. I know there's not an official word, but I do expect, and Flacco will be good enough to get them points.
Yeah, no question. I think you said it. If it's Beathard, I love the Browns. The question is, if Lawrence plays, does it change to a stay away for you? Like, is that enough of an upgrade? Like, is a limited Lawrence enough of an upgrade over Beathard?
I don't think so. If he can't move, the way they bring that pressure, they're going to dial it up even higher. The blitz rate's going to go through the roof. And if he is compromised at all, which he will be, and no, they may have to pull him because it might get so bad, because he will have no time to throw, because that's how much of the house Jim Schwartz will send.
I will say, as a Jags fan, I don't even know if I want Trevor Lawrence to play. No. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's not worth the risk of re-injury, and it's not like this is a guaranteed win, even with a fully healthy Trevor Lawrence. Like, the Browns have a way of mucking these games up. We just saw the Jags, just have their worst defensive game of the year on Monday night. Like, I don't think the risk reward is worth it here, and that's ultimately why I think we see Beathard. And certainly the number, Jags plus 3.5 would imply that it will be a Beathard game. All right, let's talk about one or two more, Jim, and then we'll get out of here. I was looking into the Houston Texans minus 3.5 at the Jets. The absence of Tank Dell, that's a big question mark as far as, can this offense still rip off big plays? Can it look as consistently explosive as it did with Dell and Nico Collins out there? Even some of their other depth, Noah Brown, he might end up missing another game. That could be an issue for the Texans. On the other side, though, we just have continued dysfunction for the New York Jets. They're going back to Zach Wilson. Sounds like Zach Wilson didn't even want to start this game. It's still just a disaster offensively. And I think there's this narrative out there that, oh man, the Jets defense, if they get a pick six or they get a fumble recovery, man, they could win this game. They're not forcing that many turnovers. All right. I think they have 6 turnovers over the last 6 games, and the Jets offense has committed 15 during that span. Like, this is not the 2000 Ravens that we're talking about here. And I think it's also a defense that, to me, I think they're getting frustrated. You watch them week to week. There's a lot of pushing and shoving. There's a lot of guys, kind of at odds with each other after plays. Like, I think the ineptitude of the Jets offense is hurting the Jets defense, because they know no matter how well they play, it doesn't matter.
Well, and the other thing, Nick, is because the opposition has no respect for the Jets offense, other teams, when they're facing the Jets defense, can play more conservatively. We don't have to score a touchdown every drive. We just have to move the ball, run some clock, pick our spots, score 17 points, and we're out with a win. And so the Jets defense isn't getting those takeaways because teams are very conservative. They understand we'll get good field position eventually. And you mentioned that move to Zach Wilson is problematic because the defense was probably excited he was out, and now he's back in, and that's the problem of betting this game. What mindset will the defense be in? And we're playing this game. If they're exasperated, they may just quit. there may be a point where, and it's a subliminal switch. It's not like saying we are quitting. It's that thing like mentally, the back of your mind, it's like, oh, not again. And so that makes it really tough because it's hard to quantify. But it was earlier, I said with the Mike Tomlin angle last week on why I was really weirded out by Pittsburgh, because that's their history and that subliminal switch thing. So again, that makes this game tough.
Yeah, it really does. All right, let's talk about Bills Chiefs quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Do you have a lean in the Circa contest? We got the Chiefs as 1.5 point favorites at home. A pretty strong showing of respect for Buffalo, but perhaps maybe even more concerned about this KC offense.
I think Buffalo wins this game.
I think so too.
Since they switched offensive coordinators to Joe Brady, and look, Joe Brady's not the end-all be-all. All right, let's understand that. But two things have happened since he took over. First thing is we're seeing more running out of Josh Allen. And they're going to keep that up because they're desperate now. They are fighting for their playoff lives, and they ultimately want Allen to be a passer. They want to extend his career. But right now, they don't have that luxury. And Allen running the ball just adds that massive component to the offense. And now James Cook did have one good game before Brady came in, but it's 3 straight games with 100 scrimmage yards. They are making him a big deal in that offense because defenses always have to play the pass against them. And if they get him involved as a runner, the Chiefs can never stop the run. Then we can talk about, the best defense Mahomes has had. Teams can get to them easily on the ground. We even saw with the Packers last week. So Josh Allen, he is going to put points on the board. I don't think Mahomes could keep up with his receiving weapons.
I feel the same way. And, my handicap for Sunday night was I think the Chiefs defense is going to win this game for them. And not only, if you think of that first drive of the game, it was just A.J. Dillon, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. Like, we haven't seen A.J. Dillon do that against anybody this season, let alone the Chiefs. And, they can't stop the run, but they also couldn't stop Jordan Love in that Green Bay passing game. And obviously they'll make adjustments, but if you're having trouble slowing down Jordan Love, and it was not just 1 or 2 games to begin that one, and then, they figured him out. It was consistent. Green Bay was moving the ball at will all night. And I think if you're having trouble against Jordan Love in that receiving core, you're probably going to have even more severe issues against Buffalo. So this one to me is almost becoming too public. Like, everybody I talk to loves the Bills this week, but it's really hard not to, man. And it says a lot to me that we're finally to this point where for so long it was, Patrick Mahomes at home against a good team. I don't care. I'm taking Mahomes. Like, that is a bad bet. Something has changed with this KC team. Like, there are real concerns here beyond, the 1 or 2 games every year, where they have like a minor blip and we all panic. Like, I think these are sustainable issues that are not going to be fixed, until we get to the offseason.
100%. I have little confidence in them unless they figure something out soon. They may not advance too deep into the playoffs. And again, I know we all say Mahomes, like you said, and because we've learned from that. Travis Kelce is looking like he's on record saying that. He says he's not the same player he was. He has to live more on that chemistry with Mahomes. He doesn't have that explosive ability. Now, I do think he does okay here, but again, not enough to keep up with the Bills. Stephon Diggs should be in a great spot here, despite the Bills' corners, and Diggs is complaining. It is a good matchup because he is nearly uncoverable with the routes he runs and the way he is able to break off his angles.
All right, there we have it. We like the Bills plus 1.5. You can hear more. Myself and John McKechnie will be breaking down every game from a gambling perspective in about 2.5 hours. We'll be doing that on the RotoWire YouTube page. You can find it on Twitter as well, and wherever you get your podcasts. That'll be published in the RotoWire Fantasy Football feed. We want to thank Circa, obviously the presenting sponsor of these videos. They've been a great partner for us at RotoWire. They put on the Circa Million contest. It's been so much fun playing in that. Another way to stay engaged in the NFL week to week. Jim, appreciate you stopping by, man. Your insights are invaluable. And, tell the listeners what you have coming the rest of the week. It feels like you're doing 100 videos a day for us.
Yeah, always we have the RotoWire Fantasy Football Live daily show on RotoWire YouTube, 11 a.m. Eastern. We are off Wednesdays and Thursdays, but Fridays through the next week, definitely there. We do a start-sit stream every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, that same usual starting time. You can catch me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel on the weekends, 1 o'clock on Saturday Eastern Time, 9 a.m. on Sunday morning Eastern Time, and always at Jim Coventry NFL on the X.
Hey, like I said, 100 videos a week, baby. Jim, appreciate you, man. It was great to see you in person, at the RotoWire holiday party the other night. And best of luck to you this week. Best of luck to everybody playing in the Circa contest as well.